I have read some very exciting books in the first 2 months of 2025, so let's talk about them. So I've actually read 5 books in the first 2 months of 2025, which isn't as much as I would have hoped. But the thing is, I was starting a medication for my ADHD and then also had to get off of this medication again because it didn't really work out for me. So the first 2 months were filled with a lot of ups and downs for me. So I just didn't get to as much reading as I would have hoped. But I did read some very exciting books, some a bit more disappointing books, and also some books that like really blew me away. The first book that I read in 2025 was Bad Eater, and this one is a murder mystery with a slight horror twist. There is a killer on the loose, always targeting Chinese people during the coronavirus and leaving a bet behind on every single one of his murders, and our main character's sister is being murdered by this killer, and after that she's taking on a job of cleaning after murder cases, and during her job she discovers some very disturbing murder cases and also bets again and again. She's making the connection that this has to do something with the killer that also killed her sister, so she's trying to figure out who actually killed her sister. And she's also being haunted by her sister's spirit. It's a lot more creepy and gruesome than it first sounds, but I do have to say that I didn't enjoy this book as much as I would have hoped. The premise sounded so incredible. I really appreciated how honest and raw and horrible also it portrayed how Chinese people were targeted during the COVID situation and how racist people got, which was completely horrifying to me, but I was also very appreciative of how honest it was portrayed in this book. But besides that, I felt like the whole book lacked a bit of depth. At least it did to me. I listened to this as an audiobook and I really enjoyed the narration of the audiobook and the whole audiobook itself. For some reason, I just couldn't really connect to the characters. I felt like something was missing there. I can't really pinpoint it, to be honest. The ending just felt a bit rushed and it all felt a bit confusing in the end, and I wish it would have gone a bit of a different turn, but I still really appreciated the story. It still really made me think, but it just wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. Maybe it didn't really have anything to do with the book. Maybe it was just my reading experience. I did end up rating this book 3 stars. So, and then I have read I Who Have Never Known Men, which is a literary fiction book about 40 women who are being held hostage in a bunker. They have no recollection of how they got there, and it's all a bit of a mystery what is actually going on. And I felt like the premise sounded so interesting. I really liked that it was kind of like this mystery and we don't really know what's going to happen or what's going on. But that's also where it went wrong for me, because I just expected a bit more. I expected some kind of big reveal. Even though I knew it was literary fiction, I kind of expected there to be like kind of a dystopian plot twist or maybe even a science fiction plot twist. I don't really know. And we didn't really get that, like not as intensely as I would have hoped at least. And it was more focused on the lives of the women and the main character who has never known anything else than living in this bunker because she has no recollection of her life before that, and her hearing the stories of the other women and not being able to connect to those stories and not being able to even grasp what the world before the bunker was like. And that was very interesting to me, and it also really made me think. And we followed the main character through all her life and we learned how she is coping with the situation and all of that. But like I said, I just had a bit too high hopes for the development of the story. I would have probably enjoyed this a lot more if I didn't have those expectations. But it still made me think. I still took something from the story and I'm still thinking about it every now and then, and I did rate it 3.5 stars. I wish I would have had a bit of a different reading experience because I hear so many people raving about this book, but unfortunately I kind of ruined it for myself. So Oh well. And then I have read a non-fiction book, which was Atomic Habits. And I haven't read a non-fiction book in a while, like in a long while. Like if I read non-fiction books, I usually read memoirs, but I rarely read self-help books and books that are supposed to make my life a bit better or whatever. But I really wanted to improve my life and improve my habits, especially because the ADHD medication wasn't working out for me, so I was looking for other ways to improve my life. So as the title says, this book is about building good habits and eliminating bad ones. The thing is, it felt sometimes a bit too overachiever for me. It had some very great tips and tricks, but also always categorized bad habits as habits that I wouldn't personally categorize as bad habits. So in that way, it kind of felt a bit toxic to me, but just to me personally, I don't think other people would necessarily feel that this is toxic for them, but to me, to my personal life experience, it felt a bit toxic, and it felt like it was portraying those views about life and about the world that I don't want to include in my life, because I tend to always set myself too high standards and too high goals. I want to enjoy myself and I want to allow myself to have habits that aren't those perfect great habits, but still try to implement more good habits. So that's why I was reading this book. And another thing that I didn't 100% enjoy about this book was that it also had some tips and tricks that I couldn't really implement into my life because of my ADHD. Some things just aren't applicable to me because I have ADHD. Some things are just too overwhelming for me to implement, and also some habits just feel very exhausting even if I started a habit. Like for example, it said to start a habit, and once you started a task, it would be so much easier to get through the task because you've already started it. And that kind of just doesn't really apply to me, because if I really hate a task, every single second of the task I'm like, I want to stop. I want to do something else. I don't want to do this. That's because of my ADHD. But I do have to give props to the author because he structured this book very well. I really enjoyed that there were summaries of the chapter after every chapter, and that really made it easier to grasp. And I did rate this book 3.5 stars in the end. And then I have also started the Belladonna series. I have read the first 2 books of the Belladonna series, Belladonna and Foxglove. So the Belladonna series is about Signa Farrow, who is able to see death and also is able to see spirits. And she's basically unable to die, but everyone around her always tends to die. So she's confronted with death a lot in her life. So when she gets to a new home, because her previous guardian has died yet again, she's trying to solve a murder case that has happened in her new family, in her new home. While solving that mystery, she is confronted with death again, and she is confronted with her abilities and discovers what her abilities actually are, and it all kind of goes from there. And the gothic vibes of the series are so immaculate. Adeline Grace does such a well job of like visually showing the reader what is happening and what is going on, and I really enjoy how enchanting and whimsical the series is, because it is so well written, and it is mostly set in the 1850s in England. The characters all have their quirks. They have incredible banter, which I really enjoyed. They are super funny, super relatable, and there are so many topics being discussed that I could like deeply relate to, and that also made me feel so seen, especially as a woman. And I read these books on my Kindle. I'm currently reading the 3rd book, and I'm tabbing the hell out of them. There are so many quotes that are absolutely amazing and that really deeply made me think, and I really enjoy that it's not only about romance, or it's not only about fantasy, or it's not only about the mystery and the murder, but it's so much more. It's about so many different topics, and it's so incredibly well-rounded. And the general vibe of the story really reminds me how I felt while reading the Caraval series and the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. Although I have to say that Stephanie Garber's books usually tend to be a bit more juvenile, and I felt like the Belladonna series wasn't as juvenile as those books. The general vibe, like this magical, enchanted fairy tale vibe, felt very similar, because we have those different personifications of concepts, like Death and Fate. And I rated both books, Belladonna and Foxglove, 5 stars because I just enjoyed them so incredibly much. Like I said, I'm currently reading the 3rd book of the series and I'm reading it during a 24-hour reading challenge. So if you want to see that video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And with that, I would say thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.